the esoteric teachings, which I have a lot more coming up on Satan down the line, to really grasp everything. So if you've been watching the videos on YouTube and everything like that, you kind of sort of should have an understanding that he represents so many different things. So now it's clear that there was a civilization here on Earth that was highly advanced. Highly advanced. Now, the Egyptians and the Sumerians talk about a global society, a world society, which explains all the pyramids all over the planet. Plato talks about Atlantis, and that he heard about Atlantis from the Greek Solon, and Solon heard the story from the ancient Egyptians. And a lot of people say that, the design for the pyramids basically comes from Atlantis, but, it's pyramids all over the planet, so you can't really tell by that. But, from my research, and again, this may be tough for a lot of people to grasp if you haven't seen everything. But from my research, there definitely was a war. So, yeah, again, before we keep going, we're going to get into a lot of things that's spooky. And as I said, when you get to this level of information, which this is part 6, the first 5 was about a bunch of stuff. When you get to this level of information, it's not but so much facts that we have. But I always do a if then, as I talked about before when I do my research. If this is true, why is this way? If it's not true, then why is that way? Now, the moon, I've shown you in a lot of movies how the moon is destroyed. The moon is destroyed in so many different movies, and it's trying to tell you something. So when we talk about this war, when you look at the moon, one, is so many craters on the moon, as if, the moon has been attacked repeatedly. There's a lot of books out there who built the moon that really digs into the moon and just asks a lot of questions that make a lot of sense. And everything points to the moon being a construct and being perfectly put in a precise position in relation to the sun and our planet for a reason. So what is that reason other than something that is going to affect this planet in a negative way, especially with all of the deception that's surrounded? So when you look at it, you can see clearly that something is up. Now, in order for meteors to hit the moon at the rate that it looks like it's been hitting them, one, we can look up and see it. So that means these meteors would have had to go around the planet, which has a gravitational pull, and then go up and hit a lot of these places on the moon. It's just a lot of these things, when you look at them, it's just like common sense stuff. Like, that's bullshit. It's no way. So it looks as if the moon was attacked. And the only way that these craters in a lot of places make sense is as if they was coming from Earth, as if it was, some kind of attack on the moon and they were trying to blow up the moon. Again, as I talked about before, when you fly across the planet, when you have flown as much as I have, you see the planet. A lot of places I've flown over look like scorched earth. It just looked like something happened. And I'm talking about at the middle of America, when you fly across the U.S., it's a large part that look like ruins, that look like scorched earth. Take the flight from Philly to Phoenix, or from Philly to Vegas, East Coast, to Vegas. You can see what I'm talking about. Anybody that's taken that flight and looked out the window, you know what I'm talking about. It looks crazy. And again, when you look at where we live, we occupy probably 10 to 20% of the state and almost all the states in America. The rest of the state is just empty space. Now, it's hard for people to fathom that, but you got to understand we have roads. That's what roads are built for. Roads are made so you go a certain way. So if it ain't no road there, you're not going to drive in the middle of nowhere. There's no civilization. There's no gas station, no stores or what have you. You're most likely not going to go out there. So a lot of people follow the roads, and the roads take you away from certain areas for a reason. But when you fly across the U.S. and the planet, Europe as well, some stuff is just undeniable. And you can see that, stuff look crazy, it look weird. And we have not, as people, been able to individually go and really examine the planet and what has been taking place. We rely on researchers to do that. We don't really have the time. And then probably if you go into certain areas anyway, you're going to be stopped. But we bombarded with work. Got to do this, got better things to do. so we don't go and explore like that. Now, it's no coincidence that George Lucas created the Death Star and made it look like Iapetus, which is the moon of Saturn. He was trying to make that connection between Saturn and the moon and get people to understand that esoterically. And a lot of people did. When you start digging into the information, as I said, it's going to lead you to Kemet, it's going to lead you to Saturn, and you're going to start getting into Greek mythology, all the moons and everything like that. This is where all the stuff is leading. So I believe, from my research, from looking at everything, that Atlantis was the civilization that fought this war, and that they probably built some kind of weapon that was able to destroy the moon, but they was basically, destroyed before they could finish it. So when you think about the moon, which has a gravitational pull that is supposed to affect the tides on Earth, so if the moon is in fact a construct and can move like a Death Star, so to speak, then it could possibly affect the tides on Earth, which could cause a big enough wave to basically, send Atlantis, crashing underwater. And that's possibly what happened. A lot of the researchers will say that the ice that was covering basically all of Canada and some of the northern part of the United States basically melted. And that water basically is what caused the sinking of Atlantis, which is possible, but that could have also been done on purpose when you think about how fast that is supposed to have happened. And the fact that these people were smart, they were geniuses, they wouldn't have known, they would have understood that it probably wouldn't be a good idea to build Atlantis where it was because of the ice. And if that ice melts, what's going to happen. I'm pretty sure that they would have known that, being as intelligent as they were, and probably would have took that into account. But, it's things that you have to look at when you get into the situation. But all accounts point to that. They point to them building this machine. A lot of times when you see the pictures of Atlantis, you see this tall, pointy tower. And it's weird when you go into the Bible, when you go into Genesis 11, 1 through 9, which another weird thing is when you look at Genesis 11, the first 9 verses is dealing with this tower. So you have tower 911. So that's a weird thing right there. But when you get into Genesis 11, the first 9 verses talking about the tower, remember, it's talking about the tower that the children of men are supposed to build. And, everything that's talking about, remember, it's talking about in verses 6 and 7. It says, and the Lord said, behold, the people is one, and they have all one language. And this they begin to do. And now nothing will be restrained from them, which they have imagined to do. Go to, let us go down, and there confound their language, so that they may not understand one another's speech. And we could possibly take that back to Atlantis. You can fit that with a lot of different things, but it makes you think about why this tower was destroyed, why the people were scattered. And basically, that's what happened when Atlantis sank. I mean, it sank and the people were scattered, and Atlantis was supposed to be where, the hub for the consciousness of the people that, when you go look at all these civilizations that had these pyramids, Atlantis was supposed to be the hub for that, where all the information was coming from and everything like that. So if you destroy Atlantis, you basically destroyed the spiritual connection for the people around the world. And when Atlantis was wiped out, everybody was scattered. And this goes into the whole flood story, which you see in Genesis, and you have all the different flood stories throughout the world, through Kalion the Pharaoh and everything, Greek mythology, and Epic of Gilgamesh and everything. And there's so many different flood stories. So, when you start getting into biblical religion and other religions and recorded history, because you have civilizations that recorded this flood, it fits. The information begins to fit. So the question is, how powerful was the Atlanteans? How much did they know? Was the fall of man caused by the fall of Atlantis? There's so many questions surrounding that, because when you think about the implications of what we should be capable of, what we should be able to do once reaching, full spirituality, full enlightenment, they shouldn't have been able to beat us. So it's really safe to say that Atlantis was still tapped in, but they didn't reach, they wasn't at full power in these bodies for whatever reason, but they were still technologically advanced. They were smart. They were still tapped in. They understood the situation of what was going on. But, when you look at, as I said, any civilization, no matter who they is, alien, human, that relies on material, it's not that powerful. So these beings, whoever they are, as I said, the war was over energy. Whoever they are not that strong. They are not infinite energy. They rely on draining energy to sustain themselves. We are infinite energy, plain and simple. So they can only understand beginning and end. We're dealing with matter, plain and simple. When you're dealing with matter, it's the beginning and the end. The only way you can sustain that matter is with an abundance of energy. So when you get into the demiurge, which we're going to talk about, goes into Gnosticism, which we'll get into. This is what it's about. When you get into Satan, remember, it represents materialism. You need an abundance of energy to sustain the material. You're dealing with beginning and end. Beginning and end is a construct of time, plain and simple. It's something that we don't have to deal with, but we're dealing with because we've fallen, and we don't understand how to completely recharge ourselves without sleep. Which is why, again, as I said, when that moon is out, your energy is drained, you're sleepy, you're tired, you go to sleep, and you become God. And you wake up, and you're recharged, and you don't even understand what you just did, and how powerful and how amazing, what just happened was, the dream, as I got into in videos on the dream. But these beings are not that powerful. And the war before these bodies was created seemed to have been a spiritual war when they had some kind of advantage, possibly, or, we just wasn't ready. It's so much to get into. So many different stories, so much information, which we will get into, in this video down the line. But everything points still, Atlantis here. And after that, we get the Egyptian civilization, which I believe, and researchers believe the same thing, was a civilization that coexisted along with the rest of the world in Atlantis. So the pyramids, when they were completely done and the whole civilization was there, intact, Atlantis was still around. A lot of people don't know either. When you go to Herodotus never mentions the Sphinx. And this is what a lot of researchers talk about this. Herodotus never mentions the Sphinx. We know he knew all about the Egyptians, which tells us, one, either he just didn't mention it, or the Sphinx was probably still buried under the sand during his life, which we're talking about the 5th century BCE. And that's really, really interesting when you think about that, because we found replicas of the Sphinx in Israel that indicate that such a thing did exist. But if it was still buried at that time, that tells us it was still buried in the 5th century BCE. That tells us that the pyramids are definitely older than we realize, and that it fits with everything else, that they would still be buried around that time. So we're supposed to be infinite energy, infinite consciousness. So you have infinite energy. And again, I talked about before how we recharge, how this goes on over and over and over every single day. And we seem to have this abundance of energy that is infinite. The only thing that really kills us is the fact that our bodies can't take the daily grind that we go through every day and recharge every day, and us not being able to have enough time to heal the body. When you go to sleep, the body is healing, but it's just not enough time that we have to spend on healing the body completely, which is why meditation is required, to where, you spend some of your time in the day meditating to handle healing your body while you are conscious. So this is why, monks live a long time. A lot of people who are really healthy live a long time, because they don't have so much, the stress on the body, and it doesn't take so much time for the body to heal. So this is one of the reasons, one of the problems that we deal with, not being connected, not being fully conscious, us being trapped, so to speak, in this flesh. So you have this whole concept of being trapped in flesh with the Gnostics. And I said we would get into Gnosticism a little bit here. Now, the Gnostics talk about the God of this world trapping us in flesh. And a lot of times when people hear about Gnosticism and the teachings of Gnosticism, they say, well, it's just a knockoff of the Bible, or they copy the Bible, what have you. But what a lot of people don't know is that there has been Gnostics around, long before the Bible and the Torah. You have Plato talking about the demiurge, which would be the Satan of Gnosticism. The demiurge or demiurgus, which translates to the carpenter or craftsman or architect. The demiurge basically would be the one who was responsible for trapping us in this evil flesh. So you have Plato talking about this in Timaeus, which we're talking about, 4th century BCE, long time ago. And you have Plato talking about in Timaeus about the demiurge. So you have Gnosticism, and you have this connection with Plato talking about demiurge and us being trapped in flesh, and Plato also talking about Atlantis, and you see, everything starts to fit.